guys, and welcome back to the podcast. So this is the Mobility Experiment, and I'm your host, Robbie Cassidy. And today we're going to discuss a thing called DOMS. And I'm sure everybody who's listening to this podcast has had DOMS at some stage in their life. So DOMS is basically delayed onset muscle soreness. Okay, and it's what happens when you exercise for the first time in a while, or if you do a new exercise, or if you work out too hard and you get it like 2 days after. And the funny thing is, it's actually 2 days after that you feel it most. You might get it the next day, but 2 to 3 days after, you really get it. It's very topical at the moment as well, because I have fairly severe DOMS from a leg session I was doing the other day. So that's what came to mind when I was thinking about it. I was like, well, because I have these now, and I'm doing all this stuff anyway, so I may as well put out a podcast to give people a better understanding of what they can do when they get it themselves. And when gyms open back up again, especially at home in Ireland, when they open back up, people are going to be really struggling with DOMS, because I know a lot of people, home workouts are excellent and they're a great way of keeping fit with the lockdown, but when you start putting on load or increasing load significantly, because a lot of people are getting back training, that's when you'll really notice them kick up again. Now, before I go into it, and it actually works well with this podcast, is that I have a mobility program out at the moment. It's available on my website at themobilitytutor.com. So there's a link. If you go through Instagram, you can see it. It'll bring you straight there. And it's for a foundational mobility and movement program. And the program basically works on the back, your hips, and your shoulder. And the goal of the program was to build people's base of mobility, because a lot of people come into it too hard, and they're struggling with it, and they find it too hard, or they find it too difficult, and then they can't improve on any of their positions. So it's an entry level into mobility, but it's excellent for a beginner or people who actually have a good level already. So the reason I say that is because I have the exercises broken up into beginner and advanced ones, and the harder ones, you'll have a version of each. So if you are struggling to get the more difficult one or the more advanced one, you always have that option of going to the beginner for the first 6 weeks. And then if you want to extend on for the next 6 weeks, which a lot of people have done at this point, then I would definitely push on and say, go for that advanced exercise if you're able to. And you'll see a massive improvement in your freedom of movement. You'll see a huge improvement in your, let's say, tightness and pain and stiffness around certain areas. And you'll feel way better overall, because you're going to get the body moving in positions you haven't got it moving in a while. And especially if you're working at home, it's excellent for anyone who's working at home at the minute, because you're sitting down all day. You're at a laptop, you're at a computer, and you're not giving the body a chance to get moving. Now it's getting sunnier outside, so people will get out a small bit more. But the fact that we're locked down at the minute, it's going to be difficult to really get the body moving in all these ways. Or like, let's say, like what it would be like if you were playing football, if you were playing hurling or playing soccer or rugby or any of those. It's in those games, you get it moving. But when you're sitting at home right now and you're not getting to train, it's going to be a lot harder. So this mobility program is excellent for just to get the body moving and the joints moving in positions that it wouldn't have been in, and re-regulating the nervous system of where it feels you're able to go into. And because of that, or because of the way the program is made up, you have mobility, you have strength, and you have breathing. You can really, really make massive gains on joint range of motion and joint strength and stability. So that's enough on that, guys. You can find that on my website at themobilitytutor.com. So getting straight into the podcast, I want to talk about what is DOMS. Really quickly, this podcast is going to be short and sweet, and I'm going to hopefully get all the information that people need to hear in there. So what is DOMS? DOMS is when your muscles feel really tender to touch. When you start moving, you feel stiff, and it usually is after a hard workout. And it could be like you go for a 5K for the first time, or you go for a run for the first time. Or it could be that you just actually get up and go for a nice hike or a walk that you haven't done in a while. The muscles aren't used to that, and because of that, they get sore and tender. And it's basically, you have these little breaks in the fibers, and it's small muscle, or it's muscle damage, but it's small amount of muscle damage, but there's a lot of it that causes inflammation then on top of it. So you'll notice that you'll have reduced range of motion when you're moving, and it's really just due to pain. But when you warm up, it goes away. You can have a bit of swelling, and then you'll have muscle fatigue at times as well. So it's just general muscle soreness from exercise, but they call it delayed onset muscle soreness because it doesn't usually happen right after exercise. It's usually a day or 2 days or 3 days after. And what causes it? It's basically just overloading the muscle for what it hasn't done before. So you could be you could be going for RDLs all day long, and then you go for Nordics, and well, there's two causes to that, but then you go for Nordics and you're getting severe DOMS in your hamstrings. Now, on top of that, and the reason I say it hits both points is because eccentric exercise actually increases DOMS that you feel more so than concentric or isometric. It's known to. And eccentric exercise is when you're when the muscle is lengthening but still contracting. So a Nordic is when you're on your knees, you're sitting up tall and you're falling forward, and somebody's holding your ankles or you have your ankles tucked in under a bar. So the hamstring is actually lengthening while you're falling down, but it's controlling you while it's lengthening. So let's look at the bicep. It's a very easy one to explain. A bicep curl is a concentric, so you're shortening the muscle. You're bringing the weight from down straight up. And then the eccentric part of a bicep curl is when you're letting the weight back down to a straight arm again. Okay, so it's that eccentric portion of the exercise, if it's loaded, generally will increase the amount of DOMS that you feel. But on a general basis, DOMS usually happen when it's been overloaded. So it could just be a new exercise, new position, or just a new set and rep range. And next one I wanted to talk about is it okay to train with DOMS? This is one that people have trouble with, because especially when you get back to the gym, or if you're in the gym for the first time, you're feeling very sore. It could be 2 days after, you're feeling extremely sore. You're thinking, I probably overdid it. I most likely have an injury. I shouldn't gym now. And then you miss gym for a week or 2 weeks, and then you go back to it then, and you get the exact same thing again, because it's a tolerance thing as well. Remember that it's a tolerance thing. So when you do get back again, you're going to have very similar DOMS, and if you do the same thing, you'll never get a consistent routine. Okay, so in my opinion, and it's not just my opinion, what people will say and what trainers will say and strength and conditioning coaches, it is okay to train with DOMS. It just might be better to train a different muscle group, because it will increase your DOMS. And I know this specifically because I was doing adductor work yesterday. So I was working on the groins yesterday, or 2 days ago, but I only got 2 sets on it because of time constraints. So I had to come back to it again the next day. I just wanted to get a couple more sets over the week in on it, and I'm feeling the effects of that today. So I was going to have them anyway, but the fact that I doubled down on it yesterday, I'm expecting to have this for the next couple of days. But there's obviously talking about stuff I'm doing in this podcast. Hopefully it will reduce it in the short term or in the long term. Okay, so as long as you're taking enough recovery time off, then it's okay to train with DOMS. So if you are stuck for time and you have to train on a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and you know that you're going to be able to take Thursday, Friday off, or Thursday, Friday, Saturday off, then it's okay to train with DOMS. Just expect that they will get more severe at times. Okay, it might be better just to change muscle group, change angle, all that, change sets and reps, and maybe work on the concentric and isometric portions a bit more, so the eccentric isn't getting overloaded and you're really increasing it. Okay. What can you do to reduce it then? So when we look at reducing DOMS, like, you need the only real way to reduce DOMS is to let the muscle recover in ways, okay? Because the muscle is going to have to reduce inflammation, it'll have to repair the damaged areas, and your perception of it, or your level of threat to the body, your nervous system is going to have to feel that everything's okay. Because remember, as from previous podcasts, anyone who's been following this podcast for a long time, they'll know that pain itself isn't just to do with hurt equaling harm. So it doesn't always mean that there's an injury there. Pain is basically a threat to the system. So your nervous system decides how much pain you should feel with something. And I've gone into a lot of detail, and anyone who's interested, I would definitely say to listen to that podcast. It's called The Pain Experience, probably number 4 or number 5. And I go into a lot more detail on what contributes to pain and the history of it. It's very interesting. Not to be, but it is very interesting in that it goes into more detail on what contributes to pain, especially back pain, like knee pain, hip pain, stuff like that. And it's not just injury. Okay, that's really important to know. So first things first, what can you do to reduce DOMS? The easiest way to reduce DOMS, or to stop that muscle soreness, as counterintuitive as it sounds, is to get moving more. Okay? Going home and sitting down and resting will extend the time that you will have the DOMS. So you're going to have that for 3 or 4 days, as opposed to only supposed to be having it for 2 days, if you just go home and sit in bed for the next 2 days. Because the second you get up and move, you're going to feel it again. So get moving more. As soon as you start moving, it's really only the first couple of movements that you'll be feeling tight, but as soon as you start getting the body moving and kind of relaxing yourself, then you'll notice that will go away. But when you sit down and you jump up again, it's most likely going to feel that small bit tight or a bit painful. But if you get moving, that will reduce them, and that's why getting back into the gym isn't actually the worst idea, because you're moving more and it will re-regulate. Now, another simple thing would be like use a cool down after a session and use a warm up before a session. And that's just priming the muscles. When you use a cool down, you could say it's getting rid of waste products, it's increasing circulation around the area. And it's just overall, it's like a phased effort. So you're not going from nothing to loads of stuff to nothing again. You kind of have that gradual increase and gradual decrease. And the same thing can be used for when we're talking about cool down. The same thing can be used the next morning or the next evening. So it's a really simple thing that you could use, and it doesn't have to be a cool down. It could be like a recovery session. We'll be doing a few mobility exercises. If anyone is stuck from, just go on my Instagram or my TikTok. I have hundreds of them there at this stage of different exercises that you can go through, different mobility exercises that you can try out just to get you moving a small bit more. And pick simple things as well. So it doesn't have to be the most complex. You don't have to go onto my page and look for the most complex exercises you can find. Really, like the simplest things will work the best as well. So like if it's your legs that are sore, just swinging out your legs is going to really help to reduce the DOMS that you feel. And like you could then go from that into the more complex exercises after, but just get it moving a small bit more. You'll notice that they will reduce, and then you'll get into more, you'll be able to go into the more complex ones. Now, on top of that, one of the most important things would be to use an active recovery. So let's say you gym on the Monday and you have DOMS on the Tuesday, but you're not gymming on the Tuesday. Then it's really important to get out for a walk in the morning or the evening. You can maybe go cycling, you could go hiking, or a really good one to really reduce them would be like going swimming. So simple things, just getting out, utilizing that active recovery, making the best of it. And in the same way as that, like a mobility session would be very similar to that active recovery. So it does, if you are stuck for time and you can't get out, it's nearly going to be the exact same, but you just won't get the heart rate up as much. Well, obviously depending on what you're doing. But an active recovery is excellent for clearing out that waste, for helping the body relax down again, and for reducing inflammation, everything across the board. It's a great way of getting the body back right again. Now, it doesn't have to be long. It's just if you get out for a couple of, could be half an hour. And I was only talking to a friend of mine there today about how to utilize active recovery, especially with fat loss, would be getting out for a long walk. So getting out for an hour walk or 2 hour walk, because you can't get to the gym that day, you're still getting your steps up and you're still burning calories. Other ways you could do it then, if you want to look at other recovery strategies, and not to be always putting you back, but I have a podcast on recovery strategies there recently, and I go into a lot more detail on it. I did more specific ones, but you could go for a warm bath or you could go for a cold bath. And a cold bath is going to reduce your perception of the pain. It might not be the best thing for actually getting rid of the inflammation and that, as they once thought it was, but it will reduce your perception of it so that it won't feel as bad. So it'll feel you'll feel a lot better after it, definitely, and you'll be able to move better because of that. I would actually advocate for a warm bath over a cold bath, because the warm one, the heat is going to improve blood flow, and like I'll talk about sauna in a second, but in general you'll be able to move a lot better. It'll be like going through a warm up. Okay, so going for a warm bath and then doing a couple of exercises after can go a long way as well. Now, a sauna is another excellent way of recovering, because it produces these heat shock proteins which draw nutrients. I suppose I'm going to simplify it a lot. Draws nutrients out of the blood, or glucose out of the blood, and it's supposed to improve your recovery because it upregulates the production of growth hormone as well. I've actually done a podcast on that a couple of podcasts back, and I go into a good bit more detail on that. So check that one out, actually, especially if you're a sports person. I definitely recommend checking out that sauna podcast, because I talk a lot about why they are actually effective, and you're going to see it a lot more in the next couple of years, people using saunas to improve performance and to improve recovery. Now, outside of that, okay, there's one, and I might touch on it, and I'm not a massive advocate for it in general, but would be foam rolling. Now, foam rolling is another one, like a cold bath, that, and I know a lot of people enjoy foam rolling, so I'm not going to completely slash it, because I know I've seen people just bash it in the past, and I think that's it's not that bad, but it does also reduce your perception of the pain. Because you're overloading the system, it kind of brings the threshold down a small bit, but it doesn't have the same physiological mechanisms in terms of like they had before, because you're massaging out the muscle, that you're pushing the waste products out of it and all that. Now, I can see people turning around, or I can see researchers turning around in 10 years and saying that it does, because it pushes it towards the lymph nodes and all that, and improves that circulation. But as of now, looking at the research, it doesn't look like it has a huge effect on recovery, as opposed to the fact that it actually takes your perception of the pain down. So it doesn't feel as bad. You're overloading. It feels really bad at the time, but when you stop, then you feel great afterwards. But as I said, we'll have to wait and see when the new research comes out and they push and they say that you should have been doing it all along. So I won't completely write it off, but as of now, it doesn't look like there's a lot back in it. Other than that, things that you can look at, and really the most important ones, would be your sleep, your diet, your hydration, and your movement, and your activity levels, and your stress management. So if your sleep is poor, that's going to inhibit your recovery. Okay, so you're not going to be able to recover as well, because sleeping is really when you do recover. It's when the body heals. So if you're sleeping poorly and you're only sleeping 5 hours a night, that's going to extend the amount of time that you're going to have the DOMS first. But then, because when you sleep poorly, it increases the level of threat to your system, so your perception of pain is going to increase significantly. And you could just check out that podcast that I've done before. Your perception of pain will increase significantly. So why it might be on one day a 6 out of 10 DOMS, if you sleep poorly, you only sleep 4 hours a night, 3 or 4 hours a night. The next day, that 6 is going to be jacked up to like an 8 out of 10 or a 9 out of 10, in that it's going to feel way, way worse, because you're fatigued and you're tired and you're not slept well, you haven't slept well. It's going to jack it up a good bit more. So sleep is really important. Get enough sleep, and that's that 7 to 8 hour mark that we're looking at. Diet, then, you're looking at protein. As I always say, I'm not an expert in nutrition by any means, so I don't ever go into too much detail, but you're looking at getting enough protein in to improve recovery. General, you're looking to get enough carbs in to improve your recovery and replenish all the stuff that's been burnt. And you're looking to get your energy back as well. So if you're eating poorly, you're just not recovering right. Okay, so you need to get enough energy back through your diet, and it's going to be really important. But I would definitely refer you on to nutritionists if you're looking for the specifics of that, or a dietitian if you're looking for the specifics of that. Now, hydration is the next one, and people probably neglect this a small bit too much. Now, I know people are getting better at it, but hydration is really important in that you'll feel a lot more energetic, you'll sleep a lot better, you'll be able to move a lot better, you'll have, as I said, you'll have more energy, but it's also going to help to reduce those waste products. So focusing on getting your hydration right is going to be really, really important. And really, like, if you're over 50 kilos, if you're over 60 kilos, you have to be drinking over 2 liters of water a day. I've done a podcast on hydration as well, which is easy to refer you back to. It was only a couple ago. It might be 5 or 10 podcasts ago. But basically, you're taking in, like, if you don't take in enough water, you're going to feel way worse, because you're going to feel lethargic. And then you're not going to recover as well, because all your cells need water. So drinking enough water is going to help reduce your DOMS, or help reduce the DOMS that you feel as well. Okay. And then on top of that, you have stress management, obviously taking time to relax, taking time to, let's say, meditate or journal or do stuff you like, read, sit down, just that you're not watching screens all the time and that you're disconnecting for a small while is going to be huge as well. And lastly, movement. So I've mentioned it before, movement is going to help to clear the area of waste. It's going to improve circulation. It's active recovery. So movement is active recovery or mobility stuff. And it's also going to reduce the soreness and tightness that you're feeling, okay? But on top of that, as I said earlier on, it's reducing that perception of threat. So if you're moving around, okay, then you're sending those signals to the body that everything is all right. So just think about getting the joints moving again and getting the body moving again. And that's going to be, if I was nailing down one, apart from obviously, like, you have to get your sleep and your diet and hydration right, that's going to be the most effective one in the moment. You're going to feel that straight away. Okay, so once you start moving, you'll feel them really come down. So guys, that's everything I wanted to talk about in this one. It's a bit of a shorter podcast. Hopefully you took a bit away from that, and hopefully when you're listening back on that you were actually able to adapt that, and that there were practical tips in terms of you can actually apply those to your own life. Really, when you're looking at it, it's a simple fix. It's just get yourself moving, get everything right, work on your mobility in your time, and take time to recover as well. Okay, but don't take too much time to recover. You don't need a week to recover because you have DOMS. You don't need 5 days to recover because you have DOMS. You need a day or two, really, is all. And it's really important to note that you're not just taking a week off every time you get it. But that's everything from me, guys, today. Hopefully, as I said, you took something from that. If you did, I would love if you could send it on to a friend. And this is going to be more important or more applicable when gyms do open back up, or when the GA starts up again, or when people get back training properly, because that's when you'll really be feeling it. But send it to a friend. I would love if you could share it on your story on Instagram as well. That goes a long way, really promotes it. And then if you could subscribe to the podcast, definitely subscribe to it. And then if you could, I'd love if you could add a rating or a comment to it on iTunes. Really is the only one you can do that on. So that's everything for me today, guys. You can check that foundational mobility program out. It's also another way, if you do have DOMS, it's a great reference point in terms of you can pick exercises from that. You'll know your sets and reps, and you'll know how to include your breathing with it. And it'll really, really help you recover, I suppose, better, recover faster, and really reduce the pain and tightness, because I use that all the time whenever I have or after a session, I should say. I always refer back to it. So yeah, guys, that's everything from me. Thanks a million for listening again, and I will chat to you all again soon. Have a good one.